we started to talk about the relationship between sound and color. Uh, that was that was easy because we both understood the relationship in terms of where on the frequency spectrum those different entities would lay. Sound was in the lower part of the frequency spectrum, and color, light, was in the upper part of the frequency spectrum. And I remember when I went to radar school the first time, when I was working for Uncle Sam, the professor, first thing he did is he played Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and then he played Pink Floyd. I thought, okay, I'm sitting in there with a bunch of second lieutenants and captains. I was thinking this is going to be terrible, but this turned out to be great. And he began to explain the reason that he played that music is because he wanted people to understand the relationship between color and sound. Radars work at very high frequencies. And if you are at all familiar with music, and especially playing stringed instruments, you're familiar with harmonics. And if you're familiar with harmonics, then you begin to understand how you climb up the frequency scale from zero to light, the pure energy on the other end. So human ears can hear because you're basically a human being as a sensor package. You have different sensors that can pick up different parts of the frequency spectrum. Your ears can pick up part of it. Your skin can pick up part of it as heat. Your eyes can pick up part of it as color. So depending on where you are in that continuum. So your ears can hear from about 20 cycles, which means one cycle is the time it takes for a particular frequency to go from a standing start to a complete its waveform. That's one cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So from 20 cycles to about 20,000 cycles, a human being can hear those frequencies. Women can hear higher frequencies than men, and animals, especially dogs, can hear up to 40,000 cycles, 45,000 cycles. Then it tapers off because your body doesn't have the sensor capability. Meanwhile, you're creeping up the spectrum, and then all of a sudden you get into the infrared part of the spectrum, and you can feel it on your skin as heat.
Mm-hmm.
Then as you pass from, and the colors of the rainbow,
Mm-hmm.
when you pass into red, then you pass into yellow, green, and blue. And then again, your eyes, because they lack the ability to pick up those frequencies, they're limited that's what we call the rainbow. And then it goes into X-rays, ultra high frequency stuff. But I remember the professor said, I just want you guys to know, he was a guitar player. He said, when you strike an A string on a guitar, it vibrates at 440 times a second. In other words, it goes through 440 complete cycles every second. And you hear that as the note A below middle C. If you multiply that times 10 to the 23rd power, the superharmonic of A440 is the color green. So immediately I thought about Roger. I said, we used to sit around and talk about this, the relationships. So that means that A440 is a subharmonic of the color green. So when you look at green, the color, whether it's in nature or wool or a painting, you're actually connected to sound, the subharmonic of that. And so the lower parts of the frequency spectrum, when you get below 20 cycles, things begin to get interesting. I remember some of my colleagues, we hooked up a passive radiator transducer to a stage one time, bolted it on, and used a frequency generator to get down to about 5 cycles per second.
Ooh,
And
5 hertz, right? Is that 5
5
hertz?
hertz, right.
Okay, 5 hertz.
And
Ooh.
our eyeballs started to float.
Oh.
So there's no doubt of the physical effects of the lower frequencies. And certainly you've gone to live shows where you feel the thumping of the bass. You feel the bottom end of the music. And it's because those waveforms can sometimes be hundreds of feet wide. The distance between the top of the waveform and when it goes back to the 0 point can be hundreds of feet. It can even be, as someone has now won the Nobel Prize for detecting gravity waves, which emanated from the Big Bang of the universe when it first came into existence. Those frequencies are so low, and there could be hundreds of miles between the 0 point of the frequency and when the cycle completes, or the half cycle, because it always goes up, down, below, and then back up again. That's a complete cycle. So there's no doubt in anybody's mind that music and color and sound and light, it's all part of the same continuum. And it's the glue, frequency is the glue that holds matter together. So there you go. And your research into sound therapy, every piece of matter has a harmonic, will vibrate at a certain note, a certain frequency. And so parts of your body, because the cells are made slightly differently, different cells make up different parts of your body, will vibrate differently. There's a tremendous amount of research now looking at what if you were able to narrow down into the vibrational frequency of a cancer cell, which is different than the vibrational frequency of a normal body cell. You might be able to crank up the volume and kill it. Frequencies also stimulate the endorphins in your brain, the neurotransmitters that are responsible for your emotions. Epinephrine, adrenaline, oxytocin, vasopressin, a number of these neurotransmitters that basically dictate your mood. And so there are certain frequencies that trigger the secretion of those neurotransmitters. When Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor was first performed, they probably should have waited to the end of the church service, because they played it in the beginning and they burned the church to the ground, scared the crap out of everybody. And then Stravinsky went, oh yeah, I like that. So he writes the Rite of Spring and incorporates the same harmonic combination as Bach did. And it was eventually called the Devil's Interval by the Catholic Church. The dominant tone, the flat 5, in other words, the 5th note of the scale, flatted down a half step, and then the dominant note again. It's all odd harmonics. There's no even harmonics. Basically, what it does is it drives you batshit.
Odd harmonics.
Odd harmonics, which is one of the reasons why digital recording has certain problems, because when digital frequencies, when a transistor goes into distortion, it generates odd harmonics. When analog tube amplifiers go into distortion, it generates even harmonics. I mean, I'm sure you've heard people say, oh, analog is so warm. And so, well, the warmth comes from your body going, yeah, I like that, as opposed to, I don't like that. It's all
Okay.
connected.